This is the SoundMind podcast, and the sound part of SoundMind is going to revolve around music, the industry, songs. We're going to be breaking down songs, having artists come in here and do interviews. Where did the song come from? Inspiration, what the emotions that song kind of brings up in people, why. And just kind of break down music, sound, the industry, and things like that. It's going to be fun. And then the mind part is going to center around our appetite for diving into deep matters, philosophically speaking, and breaking those down, which largely will probably revolve around music and sound.
Of course.
And, maybe lead us some other interesting places that we didn't even know we would go.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Today I have a question that must be answered. Today, the day of our podcast. And that question is pop music good?
Oh, my goodness. What a question.
What a question that must be answered today.
Must be.
But before we get into that, I know you went on a trip to a place.
Yes, I did.
And you recorded some artists, some individuals. So
Yes.
I'd like to hear about that. It's been a week. Since we've interacted. So.
All right. So, I went on a trip, and then I recorded some artists, separate things. I went on a trip, and then I came back and recorded some artists.
Right. I should have specified.
Yeah, no. So that would have been cool. I can't wait till I get to go on a trip and record artists.
Yeah.
That's going to be awesome. Or they go on a trip and come here.
Yeah. They can go on a trip.
Yeah, here at Sky Street Studios, where we are right now, located at Zion, Spokane. Look it up. If you don't know about it, find out.
Use the Googles.
Use the Googles. Alexa, what's Zion, Spokane?
Ba-bing.
Sky Street Studios? We went to Leavenworth, me, my wife, and 6 kids, 5 of which of ours. They're all ours, but 5 of which are from our loins, so to speak.
Yeah, they've been birthed.
One
Birthed
that is
from your
our
loins.
grandchild, which I guess still comes from the loins.
Yeah,
So-
it's like a step ladder of loins.
Right. We went to Leavenworth and did the tree lighting ceremony and kind of just started our Christmas season. And if you've never been to Leavenworth during Christmas time, good place to go, day or two, not more than that. It's pretty cool around the holidays. So, we enjoyed that. We were there for 3 days, I think, and then came back and got to work with a couple artists. Then the day we got back Wednesday, and then I had a session Wednesday night working with a new writer, singer, artist. I didn't really know where to start her music, and it's coming in. We're getting to really kind of dive in from the ground floor, no lyrics, no melody, no music.
Dang.
I don't even know how to start, mindset. She's a super talented vocalist. Really awesome. And we got a good ways. We already got we got a progression and kind of a backbone, at least for a verse part of a song, and we have a concept for the song. And then we kind of pulled up a couple of artists that she's really likes and that inspire her and she draws inspiration from. So it gives me an idea of what she resonates with, as well as maybe some of the sound ideas that we might use or pick that are similar to. That's awesome. And then last night had another session with another female artist, very similar. We're doing the song From the Ground Floor. She's a little farther along. She's written before, but not a whole bunch. She plays a little bit of piano, and again, that one's going great. We have the backbone of the whole entire song done. We have the chord progressions for the different parts. There's 3 changes. we have the lyrics all written already. We met 3 times, and so we already have the backbone of the song. So now it's going to be really fun. Actually, I was going to talk to you because it could definitely use some lead guitar. And
Alrighty.
yeah, we could
Forgot
use some awesome sauce on it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You got it.
So,
So one day we might name drop these peeps.
Yeah.
We should probably ask them first.
yeah,
but-
that would be good. That would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll keep them quiet. When we're dropping their songs,
They're hot tracks.
then they'll probably want to be. Yeah, we were talking about that too. Like the writing process, like inviting people into the writing process is so vulnerable. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And me being a writer, an artist, and a producer, like, I mean, it's vulnerable to have somebody. We peaked on the claps again. I look over and I see those red things, and I'm like, oh man, we peaked. I'm clicking those off. It bothers me. Yeah, so like even when people like get into my production space, like it's still, it's still a little vulnerable, but it's not the same as like the writing space is so vulnerable. Letting somebody come in before your song is actually really anything, and you're playing around with lyrical ideas and melodic ideas, and you're singing the wrong notes half the time, and you know what I mean, like the rough parts.
Yeah.
So we'll get those polished up before we name drop. But,
Yeah. Get it polished to a lustrous sheen.
yeah, lustrous sheen.
It will sparkle
Yeah.
and shine.
So yeah, for that matter, yeah, I'm Stevie D, and like I said, this is Sky Tree Studios, Zion, Spokane.
All things biz.
Justin Haas,
That is I.
Awesome Sauce, as I like to call him.
Yeah.
Actually, I just started that like very recently,
Yeah.
and he hates it, so I'll probably continue.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know if you hate it. Do you hate it?
No, actually. I was going to play along, but
Yeah.
I don't actually hate it, so it's kind of a bummer. Well, are you ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
All right, so first let us define terms. So when I say pop, I am not referring to, I would say, pop in general. I'm referring specifically to top 40 stuff.
Okay.
Top 40 pop charts, right? So I actually don't want to say specific artists for the most part. But yeah, just anything where you turn on the radio and you're likely to hear it
Right.
on any sort of mainstream pop station. It applies to different genres a lot of the time. There's metal, and then there's mainstream metal. There's, so it applies to different genres. But pop as a genre in the top 40, that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Got you.
So
Yeah.
That is
pop
pop.
good? What a big question.
it is a big question.
Yeah. I wonder if it would help us, because I know that metal is one of your genres that
Yeah.
you're knowledgeable about. So I guess, like, let's dive into this. Is pop good? So you brought up, you're probably not going to hear any metal, mainstream or otherwise, on the top 40, correct?
Yeah,
Is that fair to say?
yeah.
So,
Not in this country.
yeah.
I don't know about other countries. But
Interesting. That'd
Yeah.
be worth looking into. Maybe we'll try that.
yeah,
Bring that
that would be interesting to find out.
What if, like, top 40 in some countries was like, 50% metal?
If there's
Justin's moving there.
yeah, probably. I imagine that the highest possibility would be in countries with a high concentration of more mainstream. It probably like Sweden
I could see that.
or some such Nordic place.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
Yeah.
offensive to say.
I don't know, but it does. I don't know why, but it seems like that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I listened to, I think, Avatar, which is a super popular metal band. I think they're Swedish. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But In Flames, which is another popular it's, melodic death metal, they coined the term, actually. They hail from Sweden. And if you go on YouTube, their music videos have tons of views,
Right.
like to a degree that I did not assume when I first started listening to them. Yeah, so I will be specific and say this country because I do not know about.
Yeah,
what
we'll have to dive into that. So, okay, for sake of, let's draw out some ideas, at least personally,
Right.
And then viewers, you guys are gonna have your own thoughts, obviously, and
or
some of
listeners.
these are,
Yeah.
or listeners,
Yeah.
listeners and viewers. So, okay, let's start with the metal piece.
Right.
Okay, you said mainstream metal and other. Let's just call it other, right?
I mean, it's kind of tough because when you just say pop, right? I know that in the 50s and 60s, pop and rock were pretty much interchangeable,
Right.
due to just the artists themselves. All these terms were just becoming a thing. Popular music was typically rock, so
Right.
there was no,
Wow.
it was the same.
Right.
When they started to branch off at some point, I don't know a ton about it, but then pop sort of became a genre, right? So it used to be a descriptive term for any music that happened to be chart worthy or played on the radio.
Well, you got to think. I mean, like there were genres, and not that there aren't today, but there were like very specific genres that were just being birthed.
Yeah.
Rock was new.
Yeah.
And you think about that, like rock is in everything. I mean,
Yeah.
you can find it in any genre if you look hard enough.
Yeah, rock is a huge umbrella.
Yeah.
It really is.
So I mean, like, how much of that is even like rock is birthed, and oh my God, what is that? I love it.
From the loins of pop.
From the loins.
Or maybe pop was
No,
birthed from the
pop.
loins of rock.
Yeah, that's more correct.
It's probably the better way to put
the
it.
pop child.
The illegitimate child of rock.
I popped. Pop. Sorry, that's horrible, especially for any females watching, mothers included, or specifically. Anyway,
We're not horrible. We're not horrible. We're decent folk.
so okay, I don't know if it even pertains. To be honest, I don't listen to a lot of metal, but are there any similarities, like when you look at mainstream metal as opposed to metal? Are there anything that maybe could relate to our topic here?
Sure. I mean,
Like, what's the difference?
to me, it's just a boiled down version of what it was, essentially. So the mainstreamified version
Yeah.
is stripped of complexity. It's more easily digestible, I would say. And that's irritating on multiple levels, because when you are listening to music and topically, so the topic of lyric is the same for every song, it gets irritating. This is as true for mainstream metal as it is for pop.
Okay.
At least for the most part. I mean, I don't listen to a ton of mainstream rock or metal anymore, but I would say that is true a lot of the time. When you're looking at song structure, it's very similar,
Right.
and a lot of people are probably not going to like me for saying that. To them, I say, I don't really care because I'm not wrong. Songs that that basic verse chorus structure is mirrored almost identically from pop to mainstream metal, and I'm sure it applies to a litany of genres, other genres as well. I'm sure any mainstream country song, same structure, right? It's a structure that appeals to our brain
Right.
on some intrinsic level, which is why it's a popular structure. And there's small differences, but once you know what it is, you'll hear it every single time.
Right. Right. And then we can kind of get ourselves ready. Like, oh, this is the chorus happening.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can sing along by the second time through.
Because it's so simple
Right.
and easy to remember. Yeah, and in and of itself, this is not a bad thing. When it becomes bad, I think, is when it just becomes the status quo. It's just you do it because that's what everybody does, or you do it because that's that's what'll elevate your song, not necessarily in terms of quality, but in terms of listenability.
Right.
And all songs should be listenable, right? I'm not that artistic. I'm not artistic to the point of saying songs should be hard to listen to necessarily.
Right.
An example for hard to listen to music, I think, is The Chariot and early Norma Jean. I don't know that applies necessarily because it's hard to listen to due to the style, not due to structure.
Right.
The Chariot, I don't know if you're familiar.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, you mentioned that you don't listen to a ton of that. I don't know if I want to say that genre, but that era. The Chariot is like the epitome of hardcore / post-hardcore noise rock craziness. Just an explosion of sounds that assaults your brain. And I remember listening to one of their albums, Long Live. I think it was the first album that I heard by them. And you start the album up, and the very first track, Evan Perks, I don't remember. It starts up, and it's just this high-pitched feedback, and then they just start slamming on this one note. So the two guitars are playing different chords that do not go together whatsoever. And then the drummer's just wailing, and the lead singer, I forget his name, but he's just screaming. Just not like screamo. He's just screaming. Like he's just
Like
at the top of his lungs, just
temper tantrum,
just freaking out. And then they just wail on it for just this, what feels like this super long time. And that's hard to listen to because it's so aggressive and it just sounds like, honestly, kind of bad.
Right.
But that's what they were going for, right? So it's kind of hard to say that it's bad because they achieved the desired effect, which
Right.
is this off-putting, it just doesn't settle well.
Yeah.
And so if they achieved what they wanted, that's a signifier of success. Right. So yeah, I'm not so much referring to that so much as, yeah, this is a little more interesting than I thought it would be, actually, kind of breaking this down, because there's nothing wrong with the chord structures, right? So like you turn on some pop and you're listening to the song and it's, intro, which could be the chorus instrumentally or whatever, and then it's verse, chorus, or verse, pre-chorus, chorus, whatever. There's nothing wrong with the song structure in and of itself. There's nothing wrong with the chords they're using. It's pretty standard. But I think that's what's bad about it, is that it's so standard. It's so status quo, and it's almost to the point of becoming bland.
Right.
Musically. And that's apart from lyrically. So lyrically, you've got 3 safe topics, and that's what people pull from. And it just gets old,
Right.
It gets old hearing the same chord structure and everything. And an artist every now and again will come along and just level the industry to a degree in terms of pop.
Love it.
And they'll just be saying, effectually, they'll be saying, nah, I'm going to do it like this.
Yeah.
And then it's something completely different and interesting. But then it becomes not interesting because everybody else does the exact same thing that made them interesting, but it's not interesting anymore because now you're just copying it.
Right.
And there's nothing interesting about a copy.
They changed what pop is.
Right.
It was this, then they came along and everybody's like, well, it's funny because there's a window too, where not everybody jumps on the bandwagon right away. There's like this window where there's like a lot of haters, Yeah. Like, oh, what is that? And, a couple of people around the band or the artist, that are like, something special's happening here and we know it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the people start coming around, right? Like when the large majority is like, we want that. And they start buying it, watching it. Then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, that's great, and they're bringing in all kinds of people trying to make them sound just like that.
Exactly. And I think, to kind of jump ahead a little bit, I think that's what makes pop so appealing.
Yeah.
Is it's been done so much that it's refined. It's this almost to a scientific level. You know, okay, this length of verse is too long. This short of a verse is too short. And so you get it. You've done it so many times, on a production level, on a songwriting level, that you know the ins and outs.
Right.
This chord progression is not gonna grab people as well as this one, and it's been just done to death essentially. And so you can recycle it over a different artist so many times. And going back to the three safe topics, there's a couple more than that, but in reality, that's in an hour of listening to the radio, you're probably not going to hear more than like 3 touched on topics for lyrics.
Now, what are those?
I would say one is it's a pretty blanket one, but it's just romance in general. Everybody can empathize with that, like, I love this person and they don't love me back, and so I'm going to love them from a distance. Or
they're saying goodbye. I'm out the
right.
door.
Yeah. Or you're saying, I'm breaking up with you because you don't treat me good enough anymore.
I don't care what you think.
Right.
That's why I wrote a whole song about it.
Yeah. I don't care. I don't care for 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And that I would put that under the same kind of blanket. In depending on your genre, the next one is wealth and fame. I would say are pretty standard, and that's becoming more common. I think I'm not really sure why, but you see that popping up a bit more, particularly in the hip hop side of things.
Yeah, well, I'd say, when you talk about mainstream, aside from just specifically music, the entertainment business.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at tabloids or whatever the entertainment magazines of today are, red carpet, fancy dresses, nice cars, that is the entertainment world, the media. That's the projection that we get from famous America, that our kids see. So I mean, it's no surprise.
Yeah,
that continues to get bigger.
Of course. Yeah. And then the third is this kind of I'ma do me thing.
Individual.
Yeah. Like, you guys said I couldn't make it, but look at me now. Which kind of ties into the wealth and fame, but this kind of I will defeat all odds and rise to become the champion. And it's just kind of like, okay, like that's great. Like, good for you.
I love that little voice you're doing.
Yeah, let's get it, guys.
It's like it doesn't come out that way on the music, but when you do it, it's almost like it's coming from this like scared child inside.
Yeah.
I can make it on my own.
Yeah, and it's just disappointing. It doesn't to me, and maybe you disagree, but it just doesn't come across well anymore. Like, you can only hear it so many hundreds of times before you go, oh,
here we go again.
Here we go again.
Yeah, which is sad, because there's probably, again, maybe an artist. I mean, that can be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Having doubters and coming through, difficulties to accomplish something when everybody told you couldn't, and being proud of that, and if you're an artist, music just comes from what you experience a lot of times, and so it can be an authentic expression. But I agree, even with it being authentic, if it happens so often, if I've been listening for 10 minutes and I've already heard 2 songs, that you get bored.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think, musically, I think the music industry has devolved somewhat, kind of due to what I was saying. It's just this refinement process. But I think topically that's been true for a long time. At least in the romance piece, the pining heart,
Mm-hmm.
how many songs does Elvis have where he's just,
Right.
you know, metaphorically reaching out, like,
Right.
baby, you done me wrong, or
Right.
I done you wrong,
Right.
you know. And that's interesting to me, and that's one area in which the music industry, largely in the pop realm, has not evolved, is lyrically. And going back to what I said, that there's tons of artists that write cryptically, and that say something unique, at least to some degree, to them, in such a way that you have to delve into the song a little bit and kind of decipher it.
Right.
And I appreciate that because it makes it so re-listenable when there's a little bit of work that has to be done on your part. If it's just very obvious what it's about, it gives it less legs, I guess. It doesn't go as far.
Right.
But
Yeah. Something that I was just thinking about was if you, and I haven't done the study on statistics, like who, we're in an industry right now where the technology has just changed dramatically. It's people aren't buying albums anymore. They're buying MP3s, they're buying downloads. I mean, some people are still buying the albums on iTunes or
yeah,
they got Spotify or these other places, but largely you kind of pick and choose. I want this song, I want that song, but so that's interesting in itself.
yeah,
But you go back and you look at who buys music, and I'm sure I would be willing to bet that it hasn't changed that much as far as age range. But I want to say it was somewhere in between, 12 years old to, mid to late 20s are the large consumer of buying music.
yeah,
So it's interesting when you think about that, and I think more females than males is what it used to be, if I'm not mistaken.
interesting.
So you get, Elvis, right, and a bunch of teenage, early 20s, females. What's gonna get bought?
Right. Yeah.
Like that's
it's a product.
their whole mind is like that's where their mind's at, in a large degree, not all, you know what I mean, especially, girls in middle school, high school, like romance and, so it's just interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. And yeah, this boiling down of music in general, I think it's really interesting just how moving from, I don't know, maybe across the ages is the best way to put it, but through time,
Yeah.
I think that there is a little bit of a dumbing down in terms of the artists themselves. How much of the music theory pressure has been placed on production and whoever's working on the song with the artist as opposed to the artists themselves. Like how many artists know what the keys are of their songs. I don't know, honestly. I haven't really looked into it, but I'd be interested to find out. Particularly when you're working mostly as a vocalist, right? Like, how many, and I kind of go back and forth because music theory is important, but there's so many artists that get by without it. They don't know how to read notes. They just, oh, that sounds bad, let's not do that, and they just kind of feel it out. Even in a lot of the I say even, although it makes sense that the descendants of punk, right, punk rock, don't know music theory. They're like, I don't care. Like,
Right.
I'm here to play loud music and get in your ear holes, So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think of genres, and I think of not even genres. I think of pop music through time.
yeah,
Something you said about being pleasing to the ear or easy to listen to. I mean, shoot, we have like compilation albums called Easy Listening now.
Yeah.
You know, but one of the things that kind of popped into my brain as you were talking was like jazz. You know, jazz has, today I wouldn't call it pop music at all, although there's some jazz elements in some pop music. But jazz has been pop music at different times
Yeah.
in our history. You know, I would say swing in the 20s, you know, 30s, that was what was happening. And then you get, late 30s, 40s. I might be getting some of this wrong, but I think I'm in the right ballpark. You get this bebop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bebop jazz. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not easy listening. But
Yeah.
it did become very popular, you know, in the late 30s, 40s, I think. And they're just, you know, it's just all over the place. And especially the solo, you know, instrumentalist, whoever's, you know, playing all over the place, over the top of the rhythm section. And then again, there weren't words in bebop for the most part, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like, what the heck happened there, you know? And maybe it was because, jazz was fairly new, and swing is fairly easy to listen to, you know? And maybe, and I'm speculating here, and I hope that what I'm speculating is true, but it's just interesting to think about. Were there musicians that, you know, were in that, were like, man, why are we, you know, it shouldn't be this easy. And, you know, let's explore our musical expression. Let's explore, you know, the tools that we have instrumentally, key-wise, you know, time signature, you know, what notes are allowed to play in what keys. You know, yeah, we're in this key, but, like, I'm going to throw this flat note in every now and then, or, you know.
Right.
So
Which requires a knowledge of music theory.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You got to know what you can do, and then, you know, when you can break a rule.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Or, you know, the guts to break a rule and see if you are happy with
The
it.
guts to just be like, will this work? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Let's try it out.
Yeah. There's a line in, did you ever, James Brown, the movie they made, the motion picture they made on his life, Get On Up, is that what it's called?
I don't know, actually. I haven't seen it. And
There's a line he says in there. It's cool. They're all practicing, and so all the band's there, and they're in this practice session, and James Brown is correcting the band, I think, and he's like, "Okay, you play this, then you play this, and you play that, and I'm gonna sing this," and they're going through the practice, and I think it's like the bass player or the lead guitar. One of the guys in the band's like stops, and he's like, "No, that doesn't work musically." And James like stops the whole band. And he's like, "Does it sound good?" And everyone's like, "Yeah, it sounds. If it sounds good, it is good. Play it like I said it." You know, he
That's
goes
so
back into it. You know, but he's like so stuck on the rules. This member in the band, right? That he.
yeah.
No, you can't do that. It's it's against the rules. Anyway, I love that part of the movie.
Yeah.
But
That's awesome.
anyway, it's just a great point to ponder even in that.
Yeah.
You know, you can start with Dixieland jazz, small groups, right? 5 to 6 guys. There wasn't a whole lot of female musicians then, I don't think. More vocalists, and then you go to big band, swing era, right? It's like 30, 40, huge big band groups in this, this swing. And then they go kind of back as far as 5, 6 man groups with this just crazy, but again, bebop was pretty popular, and then bebop comes out and you go into, I'm not sure where exactly it went, but you end up in West Coast jazz or cool jazz, right? Miles Davis, boom, they slow the tempo. Long sustained, like real smooth jazz. So it's just interesting.
Yeah. And that kind of makes you wonder, which direction does that go? Does that go culture is affecting music, or the culture of music is affecting how people perceive what's good?
Right.
So
Yeah.
you're talking about
Great
pretty
point.
drastic shifts in how music is being, I don't know if you want to say interpreted or consumed.
Right.
Was that because people's tastes were changing, or was it because musicians were changing what they were playing?
And they were changing the taste.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So chicken or
so,
the egg.
That's so great. Yeah, that's an awesome point, because the forerunners of music, the ones like you referred to earlier that come into pop culture and say, I'm going to do it this way. And all of a sudden everything changes. Those artists, they changed the taste.
Right.
We get on this bandwagon in pop culture. I've been guilty of it myself. It's like, what do people want to hear? Right now in hip hop, trap music has been huge in hip hop for, I don't know, last 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 years it was fairly new. Anyway, it's been big. And now it's like, okay, let's get the 808, let's slow it down, let's get the triplet flow on the hi-hat. Let's get this trap. All hip hop artists are doing it. And I mean, there's trap music I like. Again, it's getting overdone now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the forerunners that come in and change the sound, they're. Anyway, my point, I got sidetracked, but I'll be working with hip hop artists that come in here, and let's do trap. That's what people are getting. That's what people want to hear right now. Is we're doing trap music. So you can have that mindset when you come in to like have practice with your band, or you come in to write a project. Hey, we're gonna write like this because that's what people want. I don't think, that's not the mindset going into things when you are doing it for the art, when you're expressing yourself, the forerunners who broke into the industry. And there's a lot of artists that fall into this category that never broke through.
Right.
But that's not the mindset. I'm making this sound. This is how I feel. Blues was birthed out of an oppressed, African-American culture that was enslaved, that was treated, differently. That was mass prejudice and hatred and racism, and a sound was birthed, and it was the blues,
From the loins.
From the loins of hardship. And talk about crazy. Talk about our music. Now, our music's been shaped by disgusting things in our culture.
Yeah.
Like slavery,
Yeah.
If we hadn't had slavery, what would our music sound like? That's a crazy thought. But it's so true. Rock was birthed out of the loins of blues, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So anyway, yeah, interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about the 70s as well, like mid 60s into late 70s, and pop music, popular music then, you know. I'm not sure what was going on, Did it have something to do with the generations, like mom and dad, and what they were teaching their children? I know that there was a disconnect between the baby boomers and, the generation, their parents.
Yeah.
That would have been the greatest generation, right? The ones that came, I think
so, yeah.
World War II. And anyway, there was a disconnect, and, we had Vietnam and these other things happening. But overall, when you look at the music from that time period, a lot of cool things happened.
Yeah.
Some of the heavier rock was birthed, right? Disco, and then there was that feud between, the dark rock and the disco. And then you got this acoustic folk, beautiful stuff coming out in the middle of that too.
Yeah.
But in large part, very artistic. And even
exploration was
there
was a huge emphasis on exploring where the boundaries were.
Yeah.
Yeah, coming out of that time period.
Yeah, and expressing how you felt or who you were,
Yeah.
In that time period. Like, not as much of like, oh, we're going for a sound here. Like, I'm trying to sound like this, or
Yeah, which is different, I think, from like copying someone else is different from being inspired by someone else. You know,
Agreed, totally.
absorbing someone else's music and having it influence yours genuinely is different than I'm going to try to recreate this in a way where I can take the best components that people like and create something out of what I'm doing that people will also like.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I think you can, I mean, if you say that you're not, you know, being inspired or influenced by any sound or music and you're creating music, and I mean, you're just not being honest with yourself.
yeah.
You know, like your music comes from a large part of what you've heard, what you've liked, what you've been inspired by, you know. That's there no matter what you do. You can't get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's supposed to be that way, you know. It's evolving, evolving the sound.
Yeah.
Our sound should be evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's inevitable, and I think that's part of what makes pop music in general so egregious to me, is that it's a false evolution. It's this fake building, right? Because you're just, instead of evolving in your own way, you're copying someone else's evolution.
Yeah.
Which doesn't come across well.
Yeah. You know what would be a cool part of our show is maybe in the future we explore like what is on the top 40, and then we pick like something, one of our favorite picks, that, because it shouldn't be like we talked about the Forerunners. It shouldn't be like, you're not a bad artist if you're on the top 40.
Right.
There's good music on the top 40. I feel that it's, few and far between for the most part, and
Yeah.
a lot of it sounding the same.
Yeah.
But it'd be cool to maybe look into that, and we bring, a song every so often, that's on the top 40. It's like, hey, we want to talk about this, and this is why.
Yeah.
That'd
I'd
be
love
cool.
to do that. That'd be great.
Yeah. So, what were we talking about? Kind of difference between time periods,
Yeah.
of pop music, pop culture.
Right.
Jazz was in there, rock. It's kind of interesting. I was thinking about, and I never thought about it before, but the contrast between like the romance and the love element you were talking about.
Yeah.
And then other time periods where there, like I said, like bebop jazz, there was hardly any words, and I'd like to go back and kind of even look at that. Was bebop even in the pop culture, or was it, kind of a subgenre on the side? But
Yeah.
I know it was really popular. So I guess that counts, right?
Yeah. It's popular. It's
Top
Pop.
40. I bet there were bebop hits. I know there was.
yeah.
Yeah. I know there was.
So, as we have kind of been talking through this, would you say that your mind hasn't really been changed? We have, I think, similar perspectives on this.
Yeah.
And that perspective is kind of that pop music isn't bad necessarily, right?
Right.
It kind of has this, it gets snubbed by some people, some more indie folks, that just kind of like, oh, it's mainstream, which isn't necessarily bad, but I think that they have a point, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you look at Forerunners, like, again, I refer as Forerunners in the musical industry, many of them had that in common.
Right, yeah.
There's, rumors about Kurt Cobain hating Smells Like Teen Spirit when it got popular. Like, hating that song when everybody loved it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard that said, more than once. But yeah, definitely. Pop in itself, I don't think is bad. I mean, the way you broke it down, it's popular music. What I agree is, unfortunate is when a culture decides, oh, this is a culture or an industry, which was a great point you brought up, decides this is what people want to hear, this is what's going to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And artists jump on the bandwagon and try to sound like that thing.
Right.
over
to,
and over and
to
over
push
again.
a product.
To push a product, and which is, another point that maybe we can unpack in a different episode is, you know, you want to make a living.
Yeah.
You want to be able to make money as an artist, and make art. Now, we know a lot of musicians don't make a whole lot of money,
Yeah.
but because of the mainstream, some do very well, and so unpacking that, would be something really cool. And where do you draw that line? But,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, copying people or copying a sound, or selling out, like a lot of people refer to
Yeah.
it as.
Yeah.
That's
funny.
unfortunate. But yeah, and again, I'm a hip hop fan. I grew up in hip hop. I started writing hip hop. I get so bored for years. I mean, even as hip hop has changed the sound, you refer to the song structure of pop music. In large, the song structure of hip hop has stayed the same.
Yeah.
3 verses, maybe 2, couple choruses.
Yeah, it's just so standard.
Yeah.
Right? It just, honestly, it gets old. And so part of, when I write, part of my desire is to scramble it. Like, what can I do to make this odd? Or just like, oh, like that's not what I was expecting,
Right.
Just to make it fresh and not stagnate and just be like shriveled up and nasty in someone's closet.
Yeah, it's like, people listen and they don't know where you're going. They might think they do
Right.
until you go somewhere else.
And then you open
they're
your closet
"Huh."
and it's
And
like,
then you have to evaluate that.
Yeah.
Do I like that? Did I not like that? I don't really know if I do or not. I'm going to have
Yeah.
to think about this for a while.
yeah, which, some of my favorite bands it was like that. I started listening to it and you're just like, that's not right. Like, that's weird. I don't know.
It's different.
And and I think that's what draws people to it. I think Gorillaz is a great example.
Yeah.
People were like, that's not right. Like, that's not how you do it. And that's what kept people coming back. It's like, this is just really strange. You show it to your friends and you're like, what is this that I'm hearing in my ear holes right now?
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Which is great because
Yeah.
Gorillaz was pop.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It broke through. I think of bands like Rage Against the Machine. Especially in that time period when they started to get big. Oh man, there was a huge time period where pop rock all sounded the same.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
years, like
Yeah.
through the 90s and early 2000s, like Grievous to me.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if they're playing the same drum kit every single
Yeah.
song.
I totally agree.
And so anyway, then you got like bands like Rage Against the Machine, just one. There's a few or several, but that have this different,
Yeah.
deep lyrical, political, offensive. Like even his voice is kind of offensive. Like,
Yeah.
because it's like
It's
high,
harsh.
mid range, and
Yeah.
It,
It cuts right through
Yeah.
into your brain.
yeah,
And it's just like a little bit like an assault. It
Right.
triggers a little bit of fight or flight,
yeah.
particularly in middle-aged mothers across the nation. Yeah.
Which is funny in production. You tend to like if you have a sharp sound like that. A lot of times the strategy is to soften it. They don't do that with him, right? Which is really cool.
Yeah.
Having producers and people that understand who this band is, what they're going for, and like I'm gonna produce around who you are.
Right.
And emphasize that and let you be that. You know what I mean?
Right.
As opposed to like I'm gonna try to mold you into something that's more pleasing so we can get more viewers, right?
Yeah.
So it's so cool to me when culture responds to that and says, I don't know what this is, but I like it. I
Yeah.
want that.
Yeah.
It shows it's refreshing and it's really encouraging. It shows that us as a culture, and maybe this to go into this and to elaborate more on that question that you brought up, is it a symptom of the music industry, right? Pop music, or is it because of, right?
Yeah.
Or is it? Did I say that right?
Is it a symptom of the music industry or is it? I actually don't know. I don't remember what you said.
Yeah. So yeah, basically,
Is it chicken or the egg?
Yeah. Is it the chicken or the egg?
Is it
Referring
causing
back to-
it or is culture influencing it?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So when you see that, you realize like our culture, no matter where we've been at, and it's my opinion now that we've got some of the most shallow culture that we've ever had.
Boom. Sick
We're
burn.
still, as a people, like, you can give up on a people, but like that goes to show, like, we're still deep and we still hunger for something more
Yeah.
than the surface.
Yeah.
You know, and when things like that happen in music or movies or literature or whatever it is, business, and people are like, there's that shift, it goes to show you, you know. So,
Yeah.
which is a good, you know, that's a good thing to look at is, you know, is the arts a platform for people to get rich at the expense of nothing else?
I feel like we could do a whole other episode just on that,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, I mean, several of the things we said, we probably,
Yeah.
you know.
So
You
we'll
know.
return to that.
Yeah, to be continued
Yeah.
on some of these.
Unless we want to do like a 2-hour podcast. But.
Right. Yeah. Or do we have some sort of responsibility to recognize, like, our lives? I mean, this is in a very general sense. Our
Yeah.
lives impact other people around us.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people, I feel like, shuck responsibility. You know, like, oh, I don't want to be a role model. I'm just making music. And I get that. That's how they feel. And, you know, you're entitled to be where you are in life.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is something that we need to, like, reflect on our life and think about, like, how's my life affecting other people? And if we're wanting to be a voice in an industry that, you know, thousands, hundreds, thousands, millions, if we're talking pop, right?
Yeah.
Of people are going to be influenced by, and you have zero idea of responsibility, you know, or music, even musically, you know, how that's inspiring young musicians coming up, and, you know, just how your life and how your sound is cultivating the world around you. There needs to be some thought, I think, into the responsibility that entails for what you're passing on, what you're leaving behind, what you're saying,
Yeah.
or what you're not saying.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I don't know that I have an easy answer off the cuff, but I do think that is another question that must be answered in a personal sense, right?
Yeah.
What is my responsibility to treat the people around me in a certain way, right? To think about how my actions affect others. In the case of a friendship, right? There's a
Right.
more direct influence. But if you're, say, a pop icon, that influence is less direct, right? You're influencing people in a way that you cannot witness on a day-to-day basis. At least not in a personal way, right? You can see, oh, my merch is selling quite well. My wallet is getting fatter. You know, you can see it in that regard. But in the day-to-day, like seeing how people process your art, whatever happens to be, you don't really get to see that. So that is an important question, I think, and one that is probably not being asked on a regular basis. It does kind of come up more now, I think. You know, like what are you saying, right? What you as an artist, like what are you trying to convey?
Right.
And is it being conveyed? Are you doing that successfully?
Yeah. Well, it's just like anybody that is great at the thing you're interested in.
Right.
It doesn't matter, you know, LeBron James, basketball, you know, if you're an aspiring basketball athlete, young, you know, and LeBron's your man, you know, you're not just you're watching him play the game. You're watching his interviews. You're watching what he wears when he's not in his basketball getup. You know, whether you like it or not, you know, these are the heroes of people, and we look at them. And I think, you know, when you have kids, it's even more evident. You know?
Yeah.
I've got a 10-year-old daughter right now, and a bunch of other kids, but she's interested in music and pop culture, and it's interesting to navigate it with her. because the magazines and the things that she looks at, they don't say that beauty isn't everything outright. They don't say you need to wear this and that or talk like this and that or be interested in this and that directly, but it's all that they portray, that the image, and I want to the pop image that's portrayed is speaking that loud.
Yeah.
You know, so to navigate that with her, because I'm old enough now and mature enough now that I can like separate myself from the culture. I can listen to a song that I detest a bunch of things about it, but maybe like one aspect of it. And so I listen to it.
Yeah.
Even though the message and the lyrical content I don't agree with, or the sound I don't like. You know what I'm saying? I can listen to that objectively. But I've got, you know, my daughter, I'm trying to navigate that and like figure out, well, how do I raise her up to know what's what, to have her own mind, to let her, you know, basically raise her up and to not keep that from her, but not to let that rob who she could become as an individual. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Just, you know, just training to process.
Yeah.
You know, to really break things apart, which is not easy to do now. Everybody wants everything to be like bite-sized, right? And just like we want everybody to like speak plainly, sir, right? We're asking everybody to say, or we just assume that they're saying things in a way that's, you know, just face value.
Right.
But that's just not the way people are. People are complicated.
No, and we're starving. We're starving for depth.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
It's like you know, bean dip. You want all of those layers.
Right.
You know, if you just take one ingredient, it's like it's still good.
Right.
But I like me some olives. You know, I want some guacamole.
Guacamole.
I want
Get down
you know,
deep.
I want all that stuff.
You don't get the beans if you just scrape the top.
This is true.
Right.
This is true.
You might even scrape a little bit deep and you'll get some of that guac, but
I want to scrape the bottom.
yeah, scrape the
You know,
bottom. The
I wanna-
top comes with it.
I want to get all that stuff on my chip, and I want that chip to go right in my mouth.
So, yeah. Should we conclude?
I think so. I think
I think the most important lesson here for me is I really want some bean dip.
Yeah.
I think that should be what we do right when we're done here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then the rest.
Yeah, I think for me is we're all birthing something right now through our loins, metaphorically.
Yeah.
And you know, I think we should be cognizant of what that is that we are birthing, both
Right.
through our actions and if you're an artist in your art, right? You're birthing something. So just, you know, be really purposeful, like about what you are birthing, and don't just be standard. You know, do something interesting.
Right.
You know,
Break the mold.
yeah,
Yeah, be different.
birth something a little bit crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been the SoundMind podcast. Like we said earlier, we're going to have some artists come in. We're going to be doing some interviews. We're going to be inviting people into these topics. I'm super excited to
Me
just
too.
hear what
I'm
other
stoked.
people think. So thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, do all the cool stuff.
Yeah,
to
on whatever
be a part.
platform you are listening or watching this on,
Right.
which there will be multiple.
Plethora.
Plethora. What a great word.
I learned it from the Three Amigos. Have you
What a
ever
great
seen-
movie.
I
We should just do an episode about that movie.
yeah, we should. So thanks for tuning in.